Flutter Entertainment has established itself as a dominant force in the global online gaming sector and continues to expand its footprint across key markets. To discuss it and more news in the legal betting industry, Tom Waterhouse, CIO of Waterhouse VC, joins me in studio. We were talking about Flutter last time, Tom, and I note they had an investment day recently, I think last week. They're planning on doubling their profit in the next couple of years.
Yeah, look, they're very savvy operators, obviously led by Peter Jackson, who's done a great job since coming to the company in 2018. They're very good at acquiring businesses at value. Obviously, you saw that in the Australian market where they acquired Sportsbet here in 2008, 2009. They also have done very good acquisitions of Betfair, Sky Bet in the UK, Sizzle in Italy, and probably the jewel in the crown now is FanDuel in the US. They've got 38% market share in the US, and they go into these markets that are opening up or looking like opening up and acquire at a savvy price, put in their management team and their expertise and know-how, and then they just put the foot down in terms of marketing. And in that investor day, they really talked about that flywheel effect, where they put money into marketing, money into the customer experience, the product, get better returns out of the customer because they've got a great product, and then they plow it back in, and then they use that scale and that operational leverage to accelerate ahead, because all of these markets are getting more and more taxed and regulated. You need that scale and that operational leverage, and they've got it. They're a huge 40 billion plus market cap company now. So very impressive, and they're the dominant scale operator in the regulated markets.
When you talk about the regulated markets, I mean, there's obviously the population growth as well, and I think they were saying something like more and more Americans are going to start in this space now that it is more regulated. What does that mean, I guess, for further growth for them as well? Because they said that they expect most Americans will eventually engage in sports betting of some kind.
Yeah, so for them, it's very exciting because they've got that scale. I think it's hard for the smaller operators in the US because obviously you need to have a license, and then you need to, New York's 50% tax. You know, you've got large taxes in these states. They've realized that they want to regulate, but they want to tax, and you need that scale. And Flutter, through their business FanDuel in the US, has got that scale there. Those companies, FanDuel and DraftKings, they're spending like $1 billion a year on marketing. They're huge businesses. And as more states open up, they'll roll out the same playbook. They'll use those operational efficiencies and provide a great experience. They'll have all the markets, the best product, and they'll retain those customers, get higher lifetime value out of those customers, and then keep plowing the profits back in great marketing and great giveaways. And in a regulated market, they have the playbook. They've been doing it now for nearly 20 years. They were successful, took over the large incumbents in the UK, and then rolled it out in Australia and have done it the rest of the world. And you've seen their acquisition recently in Brazil. They're going to be hard to beat in Brazil as well.
So they're dominating there and perhaps swallowing some of those smaller sub-scale players. Where else do you see growth though in the regulated market?
Well, Brazil is a very interesting market because obviously they've just opened up and regulated, and I think it's a really interesting test case for the global gambling industry in regulated markets, because they have taken the path of we're going to regulate and we're going to allow everything. We're going to allow sports betting, casino, we're going to tax, but they've got this other interesting play in that they've been such a great grey market for grey market operators, because grey market operators could use their PIX payment solution. But they're now saying, well, look, you can no longer use PIX, which is the payment solution. It's controlled by the central bank there in Brazil. You need to be licensed and regulated to be here. So from a customer's point of view, the licensed and regulated players that can market and advertise, they've got all the offerings, so there's no reason to go offshore. And the offshore operators are going to find it really hard because they can no longer use the PIX payment solution. So I would be surprised if most people don't come in and license there. It's a $6 million license fee. I think they've got 130 applicants. I think it's a really good test case of what a regulated market could do to stamp out as much as they can the grey market. And yeah, Flutter's already gone in there and shown their hand, large, few $100 million acquisition. You wouldn't be surprised they're going to be the market leader there in Brazil.
All right, speaking of PIX, not the payment solution, but picks and shovels and opportunities in emerging markets, what are you seeing there?
Well, look, we don't invest in the operators, so we think it's because it's generally a one-horse race or two-horse race with Flutter. They're so dominant in the regulated markets. We think the edge is finding the suppliers because they don't have the same exposure to regulation, taxation that the operators do. And we really like the Australian company, Racing and Sports, we've talked about previously. We think that they're very interesting because they've got a data play in horse racing, and they've got some very interesting products in terms of managed trading services and platform solutions. Thought their deal with Stake that they did just a little while ago is very interesting, largest crypto operator in the world. So we like them, and we also have done a very interesting deal in the last few weeks with an affiliate business in the US called Food Fight, and they are very good at acquiring customers at a very cheap cost per acquisition and activating them. And we think that any business that can attract customers at a cheap CPA or a cheap customer acquisition is very interesting for operators, because that's the game, acquire customers and retain them. And so we think that business is got some growth in it.
And speaking of growth, what are you seeing in terms of overall growth here in Australia? Particularly, we mentioned last time, footy final season, just the emergence of how, I guess, active people are being.
Look, Australia is largest gambling per capita in the world. You know, it's an amazing market for sports betting and racing, but it's in a period where you're not seeing the operator growth because it's got to quite high taxes here and regulation restriction. You're seeing with advertising restrictions. So it's a period, I think, that there's probably more consolidation. There's probably operators pulling back a little bit in terms of marketing and all those sort of things. So it's not in a growth phase like it was 10 years ago. But then you see people that do things differently, like Dabble. Amazing what they've been able to do in the Australian market. Tabcorp made that investment. They're now making significant growth in the US. So you need to think about markets differently, and that's why we look at the suppliers, because if you're coming out with innovative product, and Australia is a hotbed of coming out with innovative product because there's so many people that are interested in betting here, well, Australia might not be growing, but you can take that product like Dabble to the US, or you can take Racing and Sports to the UK or US, and I think Australia is a great place for betting, but in terms of operators, it's a little bit tougher at the moment.